Ryan from the future here. Apologies, we had a slight audio issue with my track. Had a slight echo. We've tried to remove it and just nothing's working. Apologies in advance. Thanks. Hello, and welcome to the Specialty Matcha Podcast. My name is Ryan. This is my co-host Zongjun, who also goes by Sam.
Hello.
And we're the co-founders of Senko Matcha Products.
Yeah, we launched this podcast to discuss our learning journey in matcha, share startup stories, and interview experts. And today's episode marks the end of season 3.
Yeah.
Can you believe that, Ryan?
I know. Over, 75 episodes. Nearly almost every week. I think we did 1 or 2 weeks off, but I can't believe we've kept this going for so long.
Yeah, it's been a long time. A lot of people came up to our podcast, discussed their, journey, shared their stories, and we also share a lot of our own discoveries throughout the journey.
Yeah, we learned a lot in the season, and we were reviewing all of the episodes that we had done, and we really think we came a long way. We're very happy with the progress that we made in season 2, with the guests that we were able to invite to come on the show. Originally, we probably never thought would have agreed to come, so that was really exciting. And just hearing everyone's reaction, both to the community and the work that we are doing at our other company. It's very exciting and validating to get this kind of feedback.
Yeah, and getting their stories and their reactions in this very interesting time that we are having right now. Matcha shortage, global trend of matcha is booming. All of these conflicts between, manufacturers, tea farmers, consumers,
so much
brand
drama.
creators, so much drama, so much fun. It's almost like watching a drama TV show.
Yes.
From our angle a little bit. Well, we are kind of the characters too.
So we thought the perfect way to put a capstone on season 3 is to look backwards and talk about this new culture that's forming within the global matcha community, which is very different than anything that's existed before. That has caused this shortage, but it's also going to lead paths into the future. So we wanted to do a more meta-analysis from a lot of the interviews that we had done and hearing different perspectives and kind of distilling that down and synthesizing it. But before we do that, Zongjun, I have a question for you. I recently looked up our stats from our podcast hosts. And how many unique countries do you think listen to this podcast?
Oh, interesting question. Unique countries. Does it cover all the continents?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, wow, getting popular, Ryan. I'll just give a random guess. 20.
It's 83.
83?
At least one click from 83 different countries.
Oh, wow.
Do you know the number 1 country?
United States?
Yeah. The US. And top 3. What do you think the next 2 are?
West, probably somewhere in Europe, maybe?
Nope.
No?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Like France or Germany, maybe?
UK,
or the UK
and then Australia.
UK and Australia.
So, I mean, it
well,
makes sense.
English-speaking channel. Makes sense.
So,
that's exciting. That's encouraging. Oh, thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you for all the love.
Thank you very much. We couldn't do this without you. We wouldn't do this without you. And we would have given up long ago if we weren't able to find our own community of other very like-minded people, which has been very gratifying.
Yeah, community is a good word to put it together because it's really the foundation of this new culture that's being created. On top of, all of the historical culture and legacies that matcha has been brewing across, different countries from China to, Korea to Japan. And it's really thriving globally right now.
Yeah. And, and these are places probably in the world when you look through this country list. If you wind back the clock 5 or 10 years, no one really probably knew what matcha was or cared about it or had any deep sense of preferences. So, it is really important to reflect in general just how new this culture is of people wanting to drink matcha and to drink matcha every day, which is the perfect segue into this topic. So Zongjun, Sam, you were the one who came up with this topic. So can you share a little bit about what your initial thoughts were?
Yeah. So, we've been making a lot of analogies between matcha and, coffee and wine. And if you look across, time and history and different countries, there is a very clear lineage of how different drinking habits, drinking culture evolve from time to time related to their local, culture, their local cultivar, their local terroir, their local interpretation of the very beverage that they appreciate. And we are kind of seeing this happening on time right now for matcha. Imagine that there is internet, there is a coffee podcast, 2 or 3,000 years ago, when we are observing coffee stepping out from Ethiopia or Yemen to other countries throughout the Silk Road, throughout trading, and people starting talking about this, magical black beans. It's happening right now to matcha, and we are seeing it, and we are seeing its very infancy. It's a couple hundred or like maybe a couple decades later, we look back and examine the topics that we're talking about right now. Like people are literally debating over whether or not we should add milk into matcha. Like that's like a hot topic, a hot debate. Like people would probably laugh and be like, that's kind of childish to argue about. But like this is reality that we're living in. This is a conflict between this new culture versus the old culture. This is a conflict between the new drinking habit versus the old drinking habit, and this is the conflict between, you can almost say, a new kind of beverage versus a old kind of beverage.
Same form, but different spirit. Like it's still matcha, right? But it's taken and completely removed from its original context and found deep cultural resonance in many other ways.
That's very true. And like right now we are seeing this whole matcha shortage happening right now because it's really shortage of top quality matcha in Japan. Bad matcha is not in shortage. Like lower quality, more industrial level matcha are being manufactured in Kagoshima, in China, or even in some countries in Southeast Asia. But we are seeing it's a slowly happening, surely happening dynamic shift of who holds the narrative to define matcha in this world. It has been Japan historically, and it has still be largely Japan. But as we are seeing this manufacture power being offset to other territories, as we are seeing this appreciation and consumption of this beverage being offset to places outside of Japan, we're inevitably going to see a discourse or a narrative shift that is no longer controlled by a very small group of people inside Japan for centuries.
In a formerly heavily isolationist culture that was not open to the rest of the world at all, especially during matcha's infancy, as it was becoming a much more rigid ceremony and culture, even within Japan. Right? Like it grew up completely isolated from the rest of the world in a society that was virtually isolated from the rest of the world, and actually started to undergo some major changes when Japan opened up during the Meiji Restoration, through the Industrial Revolution, through modern times. There's actually a pretty interesting argument that matcha is this ever-changing, continuously changing thing. You can trace back the lineages, and it just so happened that the first international audience to become exposed to matcha 20 years ago, 30 years ago, was through the context of tea ceremony, largely in part because the Japanese government had such effective policies at literally having it be the item or the focus or the ritual or the embodiment of Japanese-ness. They had it through policies where it was taught to an entire generation, multiple generations of young girls as part of their formal education. It was the topic of TV shows. It was the cultural exchange element. When Japanese ambassadors will go abroad, right? Like, what are the cultural things they bring with them for these exchanges? It's tea. Or when people go there. And there's a lot of good reasons why it encompasses Japanese-ness. But if you separate out the tea ceremony and the culture that has evolved within Japan away from the product of the beverage itself, which I think is a very fair thing to do, and it's now being consumed by an entirely new group of people in an entirely new way. And now, like, that sounds very threatening. It sounds very disruptive to the world, to the very traditional world that still exists within Japan. But, Sam, you see all these commentaries, and we're trying to source tencha right now. We're like knee deep in sourcing tencha. And I'll be honest, it's extremely difficult. So for any of the matcha founders out there, like, exactly what I'm talking about. People will not promise volume. People don't know when they're willing to sell it, how much they're willing to sell it. More than half of the people we actually reach out to say they're not open to accepting any new clients, any new customers. And it's an extremely difficult position. And We've also heard stories of a lot of tea farmers not liking all this volatility, not liking this fluctuation. It's being called the matcha boom within Japan, and they're just putting the brakes on. We've even heard of a factory that has stopped milling matcha until the price volatility drops. So you have people not contributing to the supply, which probably makes the volatility worse. And you have these weird set of independent actors and agents, right? Farmers can do whatever they want. That farmer can do whatever he or she wants. But when you have all of these people in concert wanting to pump the brakes on during this matcha boom, it is actually making the situation a lot worse for people trying to source it and to have it like a product that people want to drink. And you hear these farmers saying, I can't wait until this boom is over. But is that a good thing?
Yeah,
What about this new culture that has existed within matcha?
yeah. I think the core problem here is that these farmers or these two groups of people, like the consumers and the people that are working on matcha, making matcha, and calling this whole matcha trend as a boom and wanted to put a brake on this whole rolling train, they don't necessarily talk to each other. I think that's the problem. They don't understand each other. They don't talk to each other. They don't actually care about each other. Like matcha drinkers wants to drink more matcha. But these farmers wants to take a break. They are tired, which is very understandably, true. Picking matcha, processing matcha is tedious. It's hard. And these farmers they're getting old.
They're very old.
They are very old, and there's very little people, wanted to take over their business. They're like if I put myself into their shoes, like I want to retire soon.
Yeah. And actually, the Japanese government, I've been doing some research. I think it's 2014, I came across this reference material. It's a promotional material, a promotion strategic plan for promoting Uji matcha and Uji tea in general. It was put out in 2014. And if you look at the tone of that document, one, like they're very aware farmers are aging out and don't have a succession plan. But they're worried about the exact problem was their solution back then. They're worried about there not being enough demand. And they got way more than they wanted. And actually, it's pretty interesting. I think if you're under 45 years old, that's what's basically considered a young farmer, which
Wow.
by non-Japanese standards, I wouldn't classify that group as like young farmers. It's they get around a $10,000 equivalent tax credit for the
That's
first
crazy.
5 years. That's how badly they want new people entering this industry.
Yeah, now they're suffering from their own success.
Well, I guess that program wasn't successful enough. And they were talking about keeping the landscape pristine, setting up viewing platforms so that people could take photos. They wanted people to come and have this be like a very unique cultural landscape and cultural legacy to build up international demand. And now it has happened. And the industry
Yeah.
isn't able to keep up with it, which we totally understand.
20 years later, though, imagine like this
Yes.
happened 10 years later. I mean, imagine this boom happened like at that time.
Yeah.
They'd probably be happy. But
But this
yes.
sentiment of waiting for this boom to go away, I think is not the right sentiment.
Yeah, it's not.
Like it's new culture creation is what's actually happening. And what are the ways in which that new culture can be killed? It's matcha getting too expensive, which is happening, which is going to cause a bunch of people to not form the habit of drinking matcha on a regular basis. And that is what's going to have them fall off the trend. And the people who are left are only the people who are able to afford to drink it, right? Like you're churning through all of this really interesting new culture formation around people wanting to form this relationship with this beverage. And this is part of the broader reflections of season 3. Erin from Matcha U, she's based in Australia, said one of the most profound things that has been resonating and echoing in my mind ever since we did that recording. She does a lot of markets and has a lot of consumer interaction, like these gigantic markets of different products where you have a lot of chance to give people samples and talk to consumers. And she said the number of people just in the past few years who are young teenagers, mostly girls, but not exclusively, come up dragging their parents, saying like, Mom, Dad, try this. I love this. I want this to be part of my life. And they're completely skipping over coffee. You have a whole generation in many different countries, in the United States and Australia, all throughout Europe, and all these different countries that are entirely skipping coffee. Think about what it means to go from being a child to entering adulthood. There's many things that happen over that phase. And forming a relationship with caffeine is like one of the first steps to becoming an adult. And if you're skipping coffee and forming that with matcha, we have an entire generation of new consumers that want a different source of caffeine because it makes them feel better. Maybe they're caffeine insensitive. Maybe they like the color. Why do we pass so much judgment on the fact that people find matcha beautiful? Like,
Mm.
no matter how you appreciate it through, no matter what sense or what the taste, the smell, the color, the history, no matter how you're appreciating it, why are we passing so much judgment and viewing these people as tasteless? Right? Like, this is a good thing. This is what matcha needs. If you look at the number of tea ceremony practitioners, I think it's in like the last 15 years, they went from 2 million to 1 million in Japan. Like, the tea ceremony community in Japan is literally dying. And there is no hope of replacing these people. There's not enough people interested in matcha or in tea ceremony. It is a structural decline and will eventually probably stagnate out at a very low number. It is not enough people to support and prop up this industry in any rich or interesting ways into the future. The future of matcha, traditional methods, innovative methods, like the whole gambit relies on bringing new consumers into the fold. And if the industry isn't able to keep up, you're just going to be left with the richest, which is like not a good or interesting future.
Yeah. There are many layers of this whole new culture creation movement, and the supply of matcha, indeed, this is like the foundation of this movement, right? Like, without matcha to drink, like, there will be no culture associating with matcha. And if, like you say, Ryan, gets too expensive, people become less, exploratory, like, there's no culture to be formed right there. Like, there's no terroir to be discovered. There's no new cultivars to be tried. That's really, concerning, in the sense that, like, a lot of these producers in Japan are holding off their capability to continue this. I think, like, the core problem really is that these farmers are not really part of this culture creation process yet.
They
They're
never
not.
have been. They've never been part of cultural
They-
formation.
it's really important, I think, now that we are talking about it. We need to start to find ways to connect with these farmers and loop them in. Like, this is a thing, this is a trend, this is a culture that's happening globally, and make them feel that they're part of this global community. Make them feel that they're part of this, that this is something bigger than Japan. This is something bigger than Uji, bigger than, their local village, their local township. This is, like, something that, they can feel proud of, like, telling their kids, or like we can feel proud of telling our kids that, this whole communities across the world are working together to create something delicious.
Actually, and you see success cases of that. I mean, look at Obubu tea farms. Look at the cultural exchange that goes on at Obubu in Wazuka, which has a wonderful internship program, which brings in people from all different countries, from all over the world, to come learn and process and pick tea for months on end. Like, they really become part of the community in Wazuka. And then they go off onto their life, and they think about the wonderful ambassadors.
Yeah.
And they recently did an event during Paris Fashion Week that I came to, where one of the founders of Obubu Tea Farms, Matsu-san, presented and did a collaboration with a brand called Gentle Artifacts. And they were doing tea ceremonies in Paris. But he also brought like his whole family. They were like it's exactly what you said. Like, people can see and feel people interacting with the tea in these new and unique places where this culture is being formed, and where like it's in some fashion week, like really cool crossover between tea ceremony and fashion and photography in a place like France. This is exactly what needs to happen. And like, this is not a scalable thing for most tea farmers. Historically, tea farmers are suppliers. They're ingredient suppliers. Until about 20 years ago, they're like corn farmers. In the United States, corn farmers are commodity ingredient suppliers. Someone buys it. We have no clue who grows the corn or the wheat or the barley or anything, right? It's very different than really rich specialty movements. Cheese, for example, like there's a lot of independent cheesemakers, or wine or coffee after the third wave, for example, where you have a much better sense of where your food came from, and a culture can start to grow around, right? Like now you have a bunch of like all of these communities all over the world, from Thailand to Indonesia to the Philippines to Australia to all over the US and Europe and the Middle East and South America and Africa love matcha.
You're missing the other 70 countries, right? Continue.
But like, I mean, there's some real appreciation for this, right? Like if you put yourselves in like a radical empathy experiment, maybe there's some high schooler in New York. He or she has no clue where matcha came from, but they really like their matcha that they get from Blank Street, and it helps them fit in with a group of friends that also happen to really like matcha. They don't think coffee's cool anymore. Why are we passing judgment on that person, on that kid? They're just like these innocent people that like this, and they could be matcha consumers for life. These are habits that people bring into them with adulthood, especially because matcha makes you feel better. You get caffeine. It's a much more pleasant caffeine profile. It's healthy. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. But at some point, to some extent, it's understandable, because like we are literally seeing like this first wave of global, like, serious matcha drinkers.
It's
Like,
so new.
imagine like we are seeing the first group of like global coffee drinkers that are right now talking about different waves of drinking coffee. Like, there's obviously going to be different degrees of sophistications in the ways of how people form relationship with this beverage, or how to interpret this beverage. And I think, like, to some degree, why the legacy or the traditional matcha community feeling threatening is that a lot of these newer ways of drinking matcha is to some degree deconstructing the seriousness of matcha, which is really the vehicle that carries their, traditional and ceremonial culture. But, like, as the drinking culture of matcha evolve, just like, third wave coffee or natural wine movement, we are going to see a very sophisticated new matcha drinking culture being formed. It's just like so new right now. All of these people are getting their first exposure to this beverage.
And once this movement becomes large enough, there is a 100% chance someone is going to do something stupid. That's just the nature of having humanity be interested in a thing.
Yeah.
One Instagram video where that girl has this gigantic plastic bag that must be like at least a couple liters large, and like is sipping around this matcha, clearly a stunt for Instagram, probably ended up dumping it. That video has gotten so much hate and has been like the poster child of what's wrong with matcha today. Why can't these consumers just appreciate matcha for what it is and what these farmers are doing and all of these things? Like, if you really zoom out, we sound like a bunch of old grandparents telling their children as if we do not understand what their experiences are.
Mm.
Like, just how, like, grandma and grandpa were probably yelling at their kids in the 60s and 70s about all of this horrible noise, which was like the Beatles or something, or rock music.
Yeah.
Like,
well, like it's angered, triggered by not be able to control these people, right? Like, these old authorities no longer have control over the discourse. Like, the matcha has been internationalized nowadays. They are free. Like, it's no longer a top-down cultural creation, like the Meiji Restoration, like the idea of creating Japanese-ness, right? It's no longer that. It's becoming a grassroots movement. Like, people are creating their own culture, and there's no a single authority that has the power to tell people what to do anymore.
yeah. I mean, look, I think it was in the 70s. There was like an actual U.S. congressional committee looking at whether or not rock and roll was like trying to control the minds of young people. Like, you can actually look this up on YouTube. And actually, some of the people that they called in to give testimony did a fantastic job trolling these people who are asking them questions, who are basically these old like men, giving them a hard time, saying that they just make too much of a racket.
Yeah, like to some degree, it shares a lot of similarities to matcha.
So
But
this is a very unpopular opinion, and taking this out of context, and actually, this is a very unpopular perspective. Sam, how would you react to this? Let's say you have a new matcha brand, and part of their mission is to get people to at least appreciate the history of matcha, where it came from, and the culture around it. Why does their consumer need to have that appreciation for this thing that they buy? Do we put that bar on anything else? We don't put it on coffee or wine or any food or beverage or any other tea for that matter. Every time you have a bubble tea, do you need to appreciate its Taiwanese origins or something like that? Why is this
Well-
what we're demanding of people?
well, there are different, I would say, seriousness of within that exists within these beverage categories, like bubble tea, but it has tea in it. That I think that's the only um, similarities between a Gong Fu Cha appreciation or a Chinese tea ceremony appreciation. Like you, of course, will have standards and judgments in the Gong Fu Cha kind of scenarios, but you don't necessarily impose that to bubble tea. Similar things happening in coffee, right? Like you have these serious third way coffee brands, and at the same time you have, like, I don't know, G7, Nespresso, or like instant coffees, right? There are different levels of seriousness even exist even within the same product category, and I think that will also happen in matcha. I think it has already happened in matcha, right? Matcha latte is going to exist into eons in the future as long as people are still making matcha, and that doesn't inhibit the culture formation of a more sophisticated matcha culture that's that cares about single origin, that cares about the cultivar, that cares about the processing or farming techniques. These are I would say the part of this new culture creation that has the potential to replace people's, I would say, the exploratory demand to understand a beverage in a deeper sense. I think that would, be a good substitute for people to, switch back and forth between, the traditional tea ceremony versus this new matcha drinking culture. And I think that would eventually earn respect too from the traditionalist matcha ceremony practitioners. That people on the other side of the matcha drinking spectrum are not just dumping matcha into a 1 liter big jug and splash it around to do some TikTok videos. I think this new culture at some point needs to also have standards too. Like kids are going to do like stupid stuff, but I think in the traditional context or in this new matcha movement, it's not okay to dump like a Hongzu shaded Asahi into a big jug and then, and then use it to do some kind of, clickbait material. I think like people still needs to have standard.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the biggest problems is creating stigma. You have all of these people spending all of their energy and effort trying to convince people that, for example, matcha that's grown in China isn't real, it's fake, or that matcha grown in Korea isn't fake. Well, there's a horrible reality for these people. If Chinese quote unquote matcha disappeared tomorrow, we would be talking about a very different level of shortage. Japan produces 4,000 tons of matcha a year, a little bit more. I think this year it's just under 5,000 tons projected, around 45 or 4.5 metric tons. There's one company, just one company in Guizhou in China called Guicha that supposedly produces more matcha than the entire country of Japan. If they were to disappear tomorrow, along with every other Chinese producer, how in the world is anyone going to be able to drink matcha? Even like Starbucks matcha, which is everyone's first cup of matcha, like a lot of people's first cup of matcha, is not a product that's just from Japan. right? Like now you've lost your ability to onboard new consumers. You've lost your ability to have it priced in a reasonable way, right? That's not an interesting or dynamic future. That sounds like everything is about to get way, way, way more expensive,
Yeah.
like beyond what anyone could drink. And the majority of this matcha, it's going to a place where no one cares where it came from. No one, it doesn't matter to those consumers. They just want something that looks and tastes like matcha. And it kind of is. And we spent so much time stigmatizing Chinese matcha, culinary grade matcha, like all of this stuff. And what we've done now is because there's all of this stigma, and there's a lot of companies out there that will tell you that Chinese matcha is fake matcha. It's driven everyone to the products that they've loved, which is like their Marukyuu, Koyama, and their big famous blend houses, all of this Uji matcha, all of this Yame matcha. And now there's a shortage of good matcha for people that don't appreciate it because they want to drink the better thing. And now that they've been educated that it's better, now that's what they want. And like, I don't want to drink fake matcha. Do you, Sam?
Yeah, but to a very large extent, I mean, like Chinese matcha do deserve its bad name. Like a lot of them is like really, really bad. We had the experience of drinking a lot of them, but the quality ceiling of Chinese matcha is visibly getting higher and higher every day, and it will get higher in the future, right? Like at some point, we're going to see very high quality matcha being farmed outside of Japan, not just China, like Korea or even places in Southeast Asia. It happened to, wine, like different, like very high quality, grapes, you name it, Cabernet Sauvignon, Grigio, like being farmed in different countries that kind of infused into the local terroir and develop its own unique flavor. I think that will eventually happen to matcha as well. And stigmatizing it or calling everything that comes outside of Japan fake, I think doesn't necessarily do anything good to the community. We are going to need matcha coming outside of Japan in the future.
There's one thing that's very certain is that Japan is not going to be able to keep up. And it's going to be a good thing for Japan because someone needs to be able to service the bottom of the market or the top of the market. It all needs help. There's just not enough supply. And someone did David from Tezumi did a calculation recently that he put out on his newsletter. And I think he estimated around 1 million people can drink one serving of matcha every day. That's how much matcha Japan creates. And I did coincidentally did the same calculation a few days before that came out. And I came up with a number depending on what assumptions you make. It's around 1 to 2 million people. That is not enough matcha for the entire world when you really zoom out.
Yeah, compared to like coffee drinkers or wine drinkers.
Yeah.
That's like less than 0.1, less than 1%, probably.
I don't think Chinese matcha is threatening to Japanese matcha at all. I think it's highly complementary, right? As the
Oh, yeah.
market gets more educated and people start to learn and have develop different preferences, right? The Japanese then can charge more for their product. And as the quality for an average like matcha latte matcha blend in China gets better and better and better, which it is every single year, then it allows the Japanese to do what they're best at, really focusing on creating the best possible product that they can. And very interesting. So, like, for example, Suji-san from Zenkyu Matcha, not to be confused with the Suji-san, the Uji matcha farmer, Rockstar Uji matcha farmer. He said that, in his experience sourcing tea and his experience just being a Japanese person in general, they're much more product focused and consumer focused. Like these types of traditional industries are about creating the best product that they can for their pride, for their family's pride. And it's not, the best product is not necessarily what consumers want. So like that will always have a niche to exist in. But if we lose the momentum of growth within the matcha industry because there's not enough supply that can keep up, right? That you lose this gigantic pool of consumers that could be interested in that in 10 years or 20 years or 50 years. And those people are not going to be in Japan. Like matcha is not cool. So like it's dependent on creating people with deep pockets and deep preferences abroad. And you constantly need to regenerate these people. They need to have interesting things. If there's no dynamism in this industry, it becomes stale. It becomes stagnant. It's
Yeah.
the same stuff that just keeps getting more and more and more expensive. I already feel like the price increases now are insane. I don't know, even as someone who likes matcha, I'm like buying way, like significantly less. And I'm searching for better and better value. And like it's quite sad, and I think we should stop stigmatizing this. And I think actually Japanese companies or Japanese people should start making investments in other places to increase the supply. We
Yeah.
tried a matcha recently that sells for $30 a kilo wholesale. If you're a matcha brand and you're trying to source this, that's how much it costs. I tried it in an iced Americano a few days ago, and it's something that we had fresh milled on our machine. Honestly, it was good. I would buy it and drink it, and it is better than any matcha Americano that I could find at 95% of the places in Paris. And it costs pennies. Like,
That's a good sign.
it's a really good sign.
That's a good sign.
And it's important, and it's not threatening to Japanese matcha because we need new consumers, and they're not just buying one thing. Look at any of these matcha consumers on Instagram, for example. They're constantly buying and tasting new things. Everyone's in a heavily exploratory state.
Yeah, this is still very largely a blue sea market. Like every day there are new matcha drinkers, start drinking matcha. And right now, people should really be focusing on how to get more supply versus how to divide the pie, for different segments. Like I feel like the title of this episode should be revised into new cultures creation. Like there's not a single culture being formed right now. Like you have different people caring about different stuff. Like it comes back to the topic of what do you care about episode that we did a while ago, right? Like people care about different things, and people have different priorities. Like people have different demands. It's not a single culture being created in this new matcha movement. Like you have these matcha beverage drinkers, you have these matcha single cultivar matcha drinkers, you have these very traditional ceremonial matcha drinkers. Like all of these cultures are coexisting and evolving at the same time and growing at the same time. If you are a like matcha cafe owner that sells 90% matcha latte, go like talk to your Chinese supplier. Like tell them that you want higher quality matcha, you demand X, Y, and Z from your matcha. Like if you are a single cultivar new matcha brand, go explore into the countryside of Japan, go find new interesting terroir, go source more tea from different areas, go talk to farmers, give the farmers a stage to talk and share and be proud of their teas. Like loop all of the segments within your community, and do what you best at and do what you care about. I think this is what needs to be happen in this new cultures creation.
Yeah, and we're not just saying it, we're about to go do it. Tomorrow we leave for Korea to check out the matcha scene in South Korea, and then we're headed on to Japan to do more tencha sourcing. It's very fun, but it's also extremely challenging at the moment. And the Japanese tea industry also needs to change. Like who can buy tea at auction it's crazy. Like basically squeezes out. You have to go to a middleman.
You have to be a Japanese almost.
Oh, well, even if you're in Japan, you can't get access to these auctions. So that's a huge structural barrier for like creating value on top of this system. And then also like tea farmers, like I also think need to treat the people that they supply better. And this is not me being frustrated. By and large, the people that we met are very nice, but I've heard a lot of stories from a lot of matcha founders from all over the world. And I would say it's not an unfair characterization to say that at large, compared to other industries, if you want to start a matcha brand tomorrow, sourcing from anyone in Japan, they are very unreliable suppliers that do not treat their customers very well. They don't give them predictability. There are very large price changes. Like everyone is being so cagey, and I'm sure it's for different reasons. I'm sure that some people it's greed. I'm sure for some people it's confusion. I'm sure for some people it's like there's too much going on. We're just hitting pause and waiting to see what happens. Some of it is waiting for other people to move first and then see, like after one of these big blend houses increase their prices and see, okay, how much are they doing? And then we're going to try to fit in. Like there's all of these dynamics going on. But like it is, if you built your business, small business on matcha in the last 10 years, you are not being treated very nicely from an objective standpoint. And thankfully there's a lot of mutual respect. So you don't hear these people going out and trash talking their vendors. But it is going on behind the scenes. And it makes us double click. Is that the business we want to be in? We've had some serious reflections about whether or not we want to be in the tencha sourcing business. It's very capital intensive and it's extremely unpredictable. If you can even find someone to sell you a good product, right? Actually, something very interesting has changed even in the past 2 years. It has moved from let me find a good product to let me find anything. Like, who will sell something to me that at least is reasonably tasty enough? And it's not good. It's really hard on all of these small businesses that have played into the global success of educating their markets and have basically created their own failure, collectively at least.
Well, I mean, we are at a very interesting point of history, as you know, like all of these trends and demands, and the market is evolving, and we are literally in the segue of moving into different directions, possible directions of a matcha future, right? Like the future can literally be thriving or dying depending on the decisions we are making right now.
Yeah, collectively.
Yeah.
As an industry. Because the worst thing that could happen is that Japan doesn't produce enough. Everyone continues to stigmatize matcha coming from other places, creating lower demand for those products. With that lower demand for Chinese and Korean and other countries' matcha, then what happens is that everyone's going to flock to Japanese matcha. Japanese matcha has tons of structural problems and they're not going to keep up with supply. This is certain. Even with all of the efforts that are going on in Japan right now to make tencha factories and to convert other fields for tencha production, et cetera, it's not going to keep up. It's going to get outrageously expensive. Then people will stop being able to afford it. They will not form the habit of drinking it every day. And the only people who are left holding the ball are extremely wealthy, who can continue to afford drinking it. We've priced out cost-sensitive tea ceremony practitioners. We will have effectively then every matcha that you take, every good matcha that you take is a bigger bet. If your can of matcha now costs $80 versus $25, it better be good. And let's be honest, a lot of those products are not going to live up to people's expectation at that price range. Right? The cost to quality ratio that's in people's minds right now about how much money they're willing to part with for a certain quality, for a certain flavor, that equation needs to change for a lot of people. And for a lot of this mid-tier matcha, it's not going to make the cut. And then it's going to cause even more churn within this industry.
Yeah, and in the age of internet, people do move fast. If they cannot find the same excitement or coolness anymore in a product or in a culture, they are going to move on.
And all of these pessimistic people will have been right. Yep. It was a passing trend.
Yeah, that would be a very sad future, Ryan.
Very sad future.
But it's totally possible.
And on the other side of the equation, we can embrace new culture. We can make investments in other places and finding fantastic product in other regions like China, like Korea, like Thailand, places where people have the total capacity to grow very high quality tea. It's just a knowledge barrier. There's fantastic terroir and growing conditions and just general tea processing knowledge just within China alone. It can really help solve this problem to keep the prices down by increasing supply. So there's a future where prices for matcha and supply for matcha can go up and prices can go down. And all these interesting things can happen. We can explore the different Chinese cultivars that might be very suitable for making tencha and then into matcha when they go through some form of shaded cultivations, back to matcha's original roots. You can have all of these specialty products that can exist, or non-specialty products, commodity products, quote unquote, good enough matcha. That sweet spot that these businesses survive on. Right now, you have cafes that are specialty coffee shops that are doing over 50% of their revenue in matcha because their customers demand it. It is a stupid business decision as a cafe not to have matcha. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it can have a real doom loop. And we're very, very, very concerned, especially with a lot of this judgment. And we don't want everyone to be right that it's a passing trend. For Japan's sake, whether or not you're on like Team International Consumer or Team Japan or Team China or whatever, Team Tea Ceremony, Team Matcha Latte, no matter what like perspective you take on what you care about, right? Like it's really important that the price is affordable, that there's a large variety of options, and that there's these rabbit holes to go down that are new pockets of rich and interesting culture. Whether or not it's matcha lattes, whether or not it's the specialty matcha movement, exploring different cultivars and growing techniques, whether or not it's using it in culinary applications, there's like all of this whole interesting world of communities that are forming in all of these pockets of the world that are just like you cannot understand what's going on until you've been there and you've done that.
Yeah, yeah, very true. And all of these cultures cannot be sustainable with overpriced matcha or shortage of matcha. And this is, I think, the dire and very critical in like cross industry and cross community problem that we need to hold our hands and solve it together. Whether or not is the solution is to loop more people in within Japan to start more cultivations or to expand the production outside of Japan. I think like we need to start like yelling at each other, criticizing each other of their ways of drinking or treating matcha versus we should solve the problem together as a whole.
A lot of the people too that are like considered industry experts, I think could do a better job at not stigmatizing other things. I can't tell you, I've told this story about this $30 per kilo wholesale price matcha coming from China to a couple people now. And the first thing that so many people say, be careful, be skeptical of products coming out of China. And they're right. But also, they're kind of wrong. If you read through some of the matcha shortage comments, and people are like, oh, we need to start growing it in the US. We need to take pressure off the system in Japan. It's time we start doing all this stuff. And it sounds like these are the same people that are also stigmatizing Chinese matcha. But what if I told you there was a country that had the largest population of people in the world and have been cultivating tea longer than any other country in the world that happens to have
second largest population now
behind India.
Yeah, India took over like 2 years ago.
That has millennia of tea processing experience and fantastic terroir for tea. Why can't they step in?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
get your
Like the
pesticide residue report, reject that batch, and then demand something better.
yeah, the reality is like China makes good tea. Like it's just not matcha, but they make a lot of good tea, like oolong tea, red tea, hongcha, or black tea, or pu'er tea. Like there are a lot of fantastic and also very like expensive or high quality tea exist out there.
Most expensive tea ever sold was Chinese.
Yeah, like they just don't know how to make tencha yet. Like largely because people don't really drink matcha in China. I think that's
Thank goodness. Talk about a matcha shortage.
yeah. Like if you change the drinking culture, tea drinking culture in China into matcha, like you are going to have next level demand. But yeah, like good teas are being made in China. It's just like not tencha yet. Like given some time, given some knowledge, the right context and the right technology and techniques, like there will be good tencha coming out from China in the future. That's for sure.
100%, and it's much needed. And one thing that's very clear after doing so many interviews from people all over the world, from Australia to the United States to Japan to the Philippines, and all of the other countries that are represented, not only in our listenership, but in the people that we've interviewed, is that it is just getting started. This movement is so fresh. It's so new. Matcha has the chance to become this thing that you can get anywhere in the world like coffee and get a good one. Isn't that the world that we want? We want to be able to go anywhere in the world and get a good matcha that tastes good, that we would like, or that other people would like. And it's healthier, it has a more natural caffeine profile, it also happens to be beautiful, and it also happens to have this really interesting and rich culture and history that comes along with it, continues to live on through a new generation of people speaking Arabic, or speaking Tagalog, or speaking Thai, or speaking Indonesian, right? Like, or speaking Chinese, or speaking Spanish and Portuguese and French and German, right? Like, this is unthinkable, but it has the opportunity to grow into this much more expansive thing, and people want it.
Yeah, and
It's just the early baby days, and we can't kill this because it has this chance to become this type of industry.
it's already happening. It's already happening. And it's really, really right now just the foundational problem is the supply. It's really like what all of these cultures can exist into the future. Like the only true questions right now is how do we get the supply right, and how do we grow the quality altogether across different matcha manufacturer countries, and how do we expand that into other territories? Like look at wine, look at coffee. Like ever after coffee gets out of Africa and Middle East, it's being grown everywhere in the world. Like there are a lot of places in the world that are suitable for growing tea. Like, and it has already happened for tea cultivations, other tea cultivations. Like why not matcha, why not tencha? Like it's totally possible. And I think that will really be the true globalization one day for matcha, is that even the cultivation of tencha lays outside of Japan in all these matcha consuming countries.
Yeah. And then you have like the Suji-sans of the world and Furukawa-sans of the world, all of these super famous tea farmers that have all this international recognition already. They're going to become the new Romani Conti or the new Chateau Lafite, right? Like they're going to be considered the top of the top of the top of the top. And then anyone that holds this type of status is finally going to demand the price that those products deserve. Right? It does it does move it into the luxury realm, but it is arguably then what those products are worth. And then it's way beyond just the taste. It's all of the intangible cultural value. When you're buying a $2,000 bottle of Chateau Lafite Rothschild, you're not buying the flavor profile. You're buying something much, much, much more complex. The history, the cultivation techniques. You can use the same vocabulary that we're using for these multi-generational farmers. The source of their oak barrels and where that comes from, and their century-old cultivation techniques, and their deep cellar and knowledge of blending, all of this applies in the exact same way. Maybe a can of Suji-san competition grade Asahi will go for $2,000. Maybe it should go for $2,000. But also on the other side, in wine, you have places like Argentina and Chile, which can produce a phenomenal bottle for $10 as well, that tastes good. It doesn't come with the same type of rich and interesting history that is revered of these top domains and chateaus, for example. But it's something that anyone can enjoy at any price. It's matcha for everyone.
Or you can have some places like the Napa Valley, which sets the new price ceiling for New World wine. Like imagine a new Wuji exist outside of Japan in the future, which is totally possible.
Totally possible. It's just we need to break out of this very insular mindset and embrace all of this new culture formation. This is such an exciting potential future to be something so much more than a Japanese product, or strictly a Japanese product. I don't think anyone's debating that it's where matcha was born in the form that we know it. It obviously has its origins in China, but it could be a very interesting future.
It should be a interesting and a international future. I mean, like China was not a unified state for many, many years when matcha was consumed in China, and it got ported into Japan. It was already international at the time. Like,
Got
let's
lost along the way.
yeah. Let's revive the internationalism that lives within matcha for generations.
So I think that's a perfect place to stop. That's where we stand. Our opinions are always changing. We state them strongly, but they are loosely held. As even we learn more context. Every time we visit Japan or talk to new people, we're always reforming our opinions. So please don't assume that we're too preachy or dogmatic. But I think that's a great reflection of everything that we've learned and what we've taken away from this past season 3. 75 episodes in, Sam. Crazy.
Crazy. Well, see you guys in season 4.
We're going to take 1 week off and we have a fresh new take for season 4. Some of it might involve some music for the intro and potentially a new logo for the Specialty Matcha Podcast. Iterative changes, small changes. Kaizen.
Kaizen.
Bit by bit.
Yep.
And
but it will only get better.
Yeah, we hope. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you in the future.